Hello, this is Charlie Chuibaka, and this is Red Road Journeys. What I was hoping to talk about today, briefly, is this thing called Rites of Passage. What is a rite of passage? Well, a rite of passage is how a human being, any human being, all human beings change. Change what? Well, we change our status all the time as human beings, right? We go from kindergarten to elementary school to middle school, high school, to college. We go from innocence to, in my case, not so innocent.
Becoming an alcoholic and an addict.
All that stuff. It's a process. Change is a process. So this is going to be a big theme in Red Road Journeys, and one of the main foundations. Hold on, I got something in my tooth. I ate a bell pepper. Bell peppers are really good. So it's an anthropological term. There it is. Coined by an anthropologist named Arnold van Gennep. All right. And there's three major stages to a rite of passage. All right, just to stick to the facts for this video, and I'll give lots of examples in future videos. Hopefully they'll just be short, less than 10 minutes. All right. It signifies changes like, say, well, everybody has had a puberty ritual. Okay. If you're an adult, if you're in a college, if you're in a university, if you're a student, basically if you're over 20, you have had a puberty ritual. Now, I have done this training on this topic with numerous behavioral health people, and there's been some people who've commented, there's no American culture. How could UNM students at University of New Mexico, how could they have a rite of passage? What do you mean? Well, nobody is cultureless. Everybody has a culture. It's just, we kind of become like nose blind to it. It's almost like if you go over to that friend's trailer and it just reeks to hell of cat piss, and you're like, dang, bro, man, it stinks in here, man. I ain't hanging out in here. And they're like, oh, what? I don't smell nothing. That's when we become nose blind. All right, the brain kind of just boop, shuts off our ability to sense the foul smell. Well, it's the same thing with culture. Not that not all cultures are foul. It's not what I'm saying, but we become kind of nose blind to it. We're so used to it, we're so familiar with it that we don't recognize it. So everybody's had a puberty ceremony, and we'll look at that in another video entirely. And then there's there's another change that happens, say with boys. They kind of have a separation from the feminine, meaning they're not mama's boy anymore. They've kind of drifted off. They're hanging out with uncles. They're hanging out with older cousins who are males, and it's the same thing on the female side. Now remember, this is not an absolute. There are no absolutes with human behavior, so this is just in general. All right, and then there's alliance with the masculine, as I was just talking about. You go all the way up into some kind of, say, warrior class or something, and becoming an elder, or whatever your status is among your people, the people you belong to, whether it's a tribe, a family, a community, even a city. And so there's all these statuses, all these various ways, a process we go through change. So to jump right in it, and we'll go through each, I'll give tons of examples. There's all kinds of examples. First stage is called stripping of, let me get out of the way here a little bit. Stripping of old identity. All right. And if you strip away someone's identity, well, what do you got? Well, a good answer is nothing. All right. And that's what liminality is. And all liminality really means is a stage of nothingness. But a lot happens there. All right. A lot happens in liminality. That's where all the training happens. And the nature of training is repetition. Okay. Do it over and over and over again until it happens all by itself. You do all this training, repetition, 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 then you become your new status. You're the new you, so to speak. Okay? And there's all kinds of examples of this at various puberty ceremonies. We'll take a look at that next time. Also, important, going through these stages, there's always some kind of medicine man there's always some kind of guide. All right, some kind of Yoda, some kind of Mr. Miyagi, right, to kind of teach this stuff. I mean, actually, look at that. Think of Luke Skywalker. He was from a desert planet, and on that desert planet, he had a lot of technology. Now, without pulling hairs, all of a sudden he's stripped of his old identity. He's on a jungle planet. He ain't used to the jungle. He's from like Yuma, right? And so now he's on a jungle planet where there's no sand. There's just water, moisture everywhere. Almost all of his technology doesn't work. The only thing that does is pretty much R2D2, right? And I guess his lightsaber. But everything that he was familiar with is stripped away. Friends, family, most of his technology, his food, everything. All right. And then there's Yoda, his master, his teacher, his sensei. All right. The person who's training him to go through this process of change. Now it could be it could be a guide, a teacher, it could be a counselor, it could be an uncle, an elder, it could be a drill sergeant if you're in the military, or if you're in some kind of law enforcement academy. It could be your law instructor, your main law instructor, that is. Anyway, it could be all kinds of things. If you're in 12-step programs, guess what? That's your sponsor. All right, so this rite of passage, it covers all change for human beings. And there's not many things that are culturally universal, meaning that all human beings practice the same belief and or behavior. I guess 7 deadly sins is probably one of them, okay? Just about every culture has its version of the 7 deadly sins. Now, there might be a little bit more than 7, there might be a little bit less, but pretty much everybody knows that killing without any kind of justification is wrong. It's a bad thing to do. Just as well, everybody knows that sloth, being lazy, greedy, pretty much every culture recognizes that those are not good things. So it would be considered kind of sinful. All right. Also, everybody recognizes that envy is not a good thing. A good definition of envy is, if I can't have what you have,
then I'm going to destroy what you have.
All right, that's also the main incentive for, motivation for witchcraft. And not only in Indian country, but in a lot of different cultures. If I can't have what you have, then I'm going to destroy what you have through gossip, being a negative warrior. We'll look at that one too, a negative warrior. So this thing of rite of passage is real important at looking at, why we are the way we are. All right, now taking a step. There's 3 questions every human being needs to ask themselves if they want to change, if they want to know where they're at in life. And one of them is, why am I? Who am I? And then also, where am I going? Why am I what? Why am I always lonesome? Why am I always depressed? Well, who am I when I'm lonesome? Who am I when I'm depressed? Why am I still here on the res? Or why am I still here in the hood? Who am I in the hood? Who am I here back at home in the res? Why am I always in trouble? Well, who am I when I'm in trouble? Why am I always drunk? Well, who am I when I'm drunk? All right. It's this, looking at a rite of passage in your place, and it really helps you kind of see them. Why am I? Who am I? And where am I going? Because we've all had a rite of passage, a puberty ceremony. We've all had a puberty ceremony. So this is, when you look at that, break it down a little bit, you're able to see our life, kind of like an eagle's view of our life. All right. And that's a real important thing, because this other organization, very well respected among myself and others, called White Bison, I like the way they describe it. They look at a person's life sometimes as there's the mouse's point of view, right? The mouse's point of view, and then there's the eagle's point of view. Now, when we're in mouse mode, right? When we're in mouse mode, we're right there on the ground, and we're just trudging through life. All right, literally going through the muck, grass, weeds, everything. How come nothing ever goes my way? Nothing ever good happens to me. Now I got to go through this swamp. Now I got to go through all these, goat head bushes, and I never get a break. It's just one thing after another, always, always, always. Why is it like that? All right. Then if you look at the eagle's point of view, up higher, the eagle's going, hey man, there's a lot of things going on down here, and you kind of get to look at the landscape of your life. So looking at your own puberty ritual, for example, looking at the thing of rite of passages and how human beings change, it helps. It's not an absolute answer, but it helps us look at how we became the way we are, why we are the way we are, and where we're going. And where we're going, we're probably going to need to go through another rite of passage. So there's all kinds of examples, and there's. I think you're going to like this, because this is where this channel is really going to take off, and looking at explaining various rituals and rites of passage. For example, a puberty ceremony could be going to boot camp. All right, we'll look at that. Going in the military, that's definitely an American rite of passage, going through the military. Going to college, we'll look at a few different tribal puberty ceremonies as well too. Going to rehab, that's definitely a rite of passage, right? Going to prison, gangs, becoming an alcoholic, becoming a heroin addict, anything that you can define as a culture, there's a rite of passage into it. I mean, you look at the weed culture, that is definitely a culture, right? So there's a rite of passage. I mean, I'm talking about going from like a tween who never smoked weed, never drank or anything, was into, video games, and all of a sudden by age 17 or 16, he's got dreadlocks and he's all into jaw, and he's always waking and baking. That's all he does. That was a process. That didn't just go bam. That was a process how that happened, and it was usually a rite of passage. And if it was at that young of an age, it was probably that was his puberty ceremony. Okay, so these are the three stages: stripping of old identity, liminality, and then the new status, the new you. Next, for the purposes of the video, we'll look at a couple of puberty rituals. So anyway, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you real soon. I'm hoping to do these 2 times a week. Okay, so please subscribe to my channel. One video will probably be me and Jackie just shooting the chant. Other one will be looking at rituals and rites of passage. I'm really thirsty. I'm choking. So it's summer here in New Mexico. Stay hydrated where you are. Drink plenty of water. Get some sleep. And then welcome to your recovery. Recovery is a whole new culture too. So we're going to put that in this context too. All right. Recovery is definitely a rite of passage into something new. But you kind of have to be aware of what you're doing, all right? Because old thinking, old ways of behaving, they're not going to open any new doors. See ya.